There is a version of you that existed for 2 full years, that laughed, cried, learned to walk, and felt love, and that version of you is gone. Not hidden, not repressed, gone. And what happened to those memories is stranger than anyone expected. Here's the strange part first. It's not that your brain was too weak, back then, to save anything. It's that it was saving things constantly, and something came along afterward and wiped the drive clean. For most of the last century, the explanation people reached for was simple. Babies' brains just aren't developed enough to form real memories. Too young, too immature, not wired for it yet. It sounds reasonable. It's also wrong, and we've known it's wrong since the 1980s. A psychologist named Carolyn Rovee-Collier at Rutgers ran one of the cleverest experiments in developmental psychology almost by accident. She noticed her own infant son got happy whenever the mobile above his crib moved. So she tied a ribbon from his ankle to the mobile. He kicked, the mobile swung, and within minutes he'd figured out he was in control of it. When she brought babies back days later and reattached the ribbon, they didn't relearn the trick. They just started kicking immediately, like no time had passed at all. 2- and 3-month-olds held on to that memory for close to a week. 6-month-olds held it for weeks. So infant brains can absolutely learn, store, and retrieve information. That was settled science decades ago. And yet every one of those babies grew up with zero conscious access to that time in their life. Which means something else, something more specific, is erasing it. Part of the answer is architecture. The hippocampus is the structure that takes a lived moment and files it away as something you can replay later. In an adult, it works in tight coordination with the prefrontal cortex to encode, tag, and store an experience as a retrievable episode. In an infant, that circuitry is still under construction. A key gateway inside the hippocampus, called the dentate gyrus, isn't fully wired until somewhere around age 2 to 4. Short-term memory works. The pipeline to long-term storage doesn't. Not yet. But that's only the beginning. What comes next is the part almost nobody expects. In 2012, 2 neuroscientists in Toronto, Sheena Jocelyn and Paul Franklin, floated a hypothesis that sounded almost backwards. What if the very process building your infant brain is also what's destroying your infant memories? Here's the logic. In your first years of life, your hippocampus produces new neurons at an extraordinary rate, a process called neurogenesis. Every one of those new neurons has to wire itself into existing circuits to be useful. But wiring in means displacing whatever connections were already sitting there. The connections holding your earliest memories. In 2014, that hypothesis got tested directly, and the results ran in the journal Science. When researchers artificially boosted neurogenesis in adult mice, the mice started forgetting things they'd already learned. When they slowed neurogenesis down in infant mice, the infants held on to memories far longer than normal. Then they checked the opposite kind of animal, species like guinea pigs and degus, born with hippocampi that are already mostly wired at birth, with very little post-birth neurogenesis. Those newborns didn't show the same amnesia human infants do. The pattern held exactly where the theory predicted it would. Your earliest memories weren't lost because they were never written down. They were overwritten. Your brain was under construction, and construction meant demolition. There's a second layer to this, and it might be the part that unsettles people most. To hold what scientists call an autobiographical memory, a memory where you are the central character of your own story, you first need a working concept of you. You need to know you exist as a separate person that things are happening to. In 1972, a psychologist named Beulah Amsterdam ran the experiment that's now the standard test for this. Dab a spot of rouge on a baby's nose, sit them in front of a mirror, watch what they do. Below about 18 months, babies treat the reflection like a stranger, smiling at it, reaching past it, occasionally looking behind the mirror for whoever that other kid is. Somewhere between 18 and 24 months, the behavior flips. The baby reaches for their own nose. They understand, for what appears to be the first time, that the face in the glass belongs to them. That threshold lines up almost exactly with the earliest age autobiographical memories can begin forming at all, which means, quite literally, that for the first year and a half of your life, there was no continuous you yet to have the experience belong to. Not in the way you experience yourself now. There was no narrator sitting behind your eyes, sorting the raw footage into a story with your name on it. Which raises an uncomfortable question. The baby in your earliest photographs, the one your parents can tell you stories about, the one who existed before there was a you to remember any of it, is that actually you? Or is it someone who lived in the same body, who got quietly dissolved and rebuilt, one neuron at a time, into the person reading this sentence right now? There's one more piece, and it's language. A developmental psychologist named Catherine Nelson, working for decades at the CUNY Graduate Center, argued that language doesn't just describe your memories after the fact, it builds the shelf they sit on. Before you could speak, your experiences existed as raw sensation, sound, warmth, fear, light, with no framework to hold them together. Once children start talking, and especially once adults start narrating the past back to them. Remember when we went to the beach? Memory retention jumps dramatically. Language turns loose sensation into a storable episode. And this isn't just theory sitting in a journal somewhere. Chi Wang, at Cornell, compared the earliest childhood memories of American and Chinese adults and found consistent, measurable differences tied to how much each culture narrates a child's personal past out loud. Separately, researchers studying New Zealand found the same pattern along different lines. Maori adults, from an oral culture built around personal storytelling, reported earliest memories reaching back further than either European New Zealanders or the Asian adults in the same study. The culture that raised you quite literally set the boundary of how far back your own memory reaches. So here's what actually happened to your first 2 years. Your hippocampus wasn't finished being built. The neurons flooding in to finish building it tore through whatever memory traces had already formed. You had no stable self yet to anchor an experience to. And you had no language yet to give raw sensation a shape sturdy enough to survive. It wasn't one failure. It was 4 systems, none of them broken, all doing exactly what they were supposed to do, and the side effect, unavoidably, was erasing the only witness who was there. Every person who has ever lived has this exact gap. Not a blurry memory of infancy, a total, complete blackout, identical in every human being across every culture and every era. And the honest answer for why isn't that your brain failed at its job back then. It's that your brain had a more urgent job than remembering. It was building the person who would eventually be able to remember anything at all, and that meant erasing the one who came before you were finished.